Okay. Welcome, super secret agent trainees, to your mission today at WhizGirls Academy. We are super lucky to have Jackie Fast here with us today. She's the founder of Sandbox Studios, and she's going to tell us all about her journey. So thank you, Jackie, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So tell us about your childhood.
So I grew up in Canada. I'm now living in LA, and I had a long stint in London, but I grew up in Canada in a kind of like a city outside of Vancouver, so very suburban. I have three brothers, two older, one younger. Everybody's pretty average, I'd say. Grew up in a regular kind of home. My dad designs kitchens for like very rich people. And my mom is an accountant by trade. And I went to, high school and elementary school, just like everybody else did, and went to university as well in Canada. And then I ended up going abroad after that.
Interesting. And tell us about your passions and hobbies as a child.
So when I was a kid, I really liked math and reading. So my parents always kind of joked that I would make them go broke for all of the books. And eventually we got keen and had like a library card. And I literally was in the library like twice a week, probably changing up books and getting new books. I was really a ferocious reader. I remember when I was younger, like after bedtime, I would take a flashlight and go under my covers and read for hours. I really enjoyed that. And then conversely, or at least the other hobby I had was, math. I was really good at math when I was younger. And I used to be able to like finish a math test like in like 3 minutes and like have straight A's. And then I took advanced math as well. One of the reasons maybe I didn't continue on that math journey is I had a teacher in 8th grade who told me that math was only for boys, which was a really weird, in hindsight, weird comment to be making. But, I really took that to heart, which was kind of silly of me, really. And I didn't continue doing advanced math classes because I was under the impression that math wasn't a career, which truthfully is anything far from it. But those are the things I like to do. I played sports. I wasn't great at them, but I kind of enjoyed the camaraderie, and those are kind of my hobbies really growing up. I had a horse. I horseback. I did a bit of riding when I was younger as well.
Very cool. Okay, so math was huge for you up until I think you said 8th grade. And then math is also STEM, which is a big part of what we're going to talk about here. So I'm curious, like, when did you first hear about STEM? And then how did that, like, if you had any mentors along the way as well?
Truthfully, and I'm 40 years old now, I didn't really learn about what STEM was until, what would it be now? 10 years ago. It was probably around the right amount of time. So I had quite a large agency in London that did sponsorship, and a client of ours was trying to break the sound barrier with a car. And they developed quite a really robust STEM program that went into a bunch of schools, just like schools that this is going into, and we helped educate kids around STEM. And so that was my first real understanding that it was important, and the trajectory of, when everybody landed on the moon, everybody was really interested in maths and science, and that kind of really has faded because we haven't had any huge breakthroughs like, a human landing on the moon in quite some time. And so I learned about like the need for a STEM and the need for people to really understand what STEM was. And as an adult looking back on it, it really resonated with me because I wish that we had seen people do that. And going back to my grade 8 teacher who told me math was just for boys, I didn't have any other exposure to understand that wasn't true. My parents didn't really care about what we did truthfully, but they didn't really like talk to us about stuff. And so because I had a client that was doing this, because it kind of really resonated me with my own childhood, I really got behind a lot of what they were doing. And so I was really heavily involved with that program, getting sponsors for it. I would attend a lot of the school stuff that they did in London just because I thought it was really interesting and really worthwhile.
That's really fascinating, because I think there's a point where everyone hears you shouldn't do XYZ, and then that kind of derails them. But you kind of came back to it, and now you're like in finance. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But I want to hear about if you had a dream job when you were younger and what that was like.
I mean, when I was very young, I wanted to work at Dairy Queen to have free ice cream. And then, yeah, I think when I was kind of, I guess, when I was around 12, I really thought being a psychologist would be really interesting, but I really don't know why I thought that would be really interesting. And I didn't really have a lot of opportunities to see other entrepreneurs. The only person that owned their own business in my network and in my community was my dentist, and I didn't want to become a dentist. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to what I'm doing now, truthfully. And I think if I would have had more exposure to it, I probably would have been like, oh, that would be what I would want to do. So I kind of went through school without really having a game plan, truthfully.
Yeah, that's very fascinating because your journey with your degrees were like international business and you ended up in Beijing. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'm half Chinese, so that's kind of how I ended up in China. So my father is from Hong Kong, and so I kind of grew up, learning Cantonese and the culture and all of that stuff. So there was an opportunity within our university to kind of do an exchange program. So I went to Beijing for just to do kind of like a diploma program there.
Okay, and then you ended up going to psychology, and that was psychology, I think, visual arts, and then business as well.
Yeah, it was business like. I like kind of put that in there to explain why I'm a business person now. I think when I did my LinkedIn, I think that's why I majored in psychology and minored in fine art. So I still kind of thought I was going to be a psychologist, still not really understanding what psychology was. And fine art, I kind of developed when I was in university. It was I had to take an electoral course, or just like you have to like tick the boxes of like a science courses or whatever. And I was late to register, and the only available course was fine art. And I was not an artist by any means. I had wanted to get into the photography class, and I had to take it, and I loved it, fell in love with it, and actually really developed like a passion for painting.
That's wild. Okay, so then you decide to get into finance and business, and I think it's the University of Westminster.
Yeah, so I moved to London when I was 18 and started working, and I got a job in sponsorship, and I really wanted to move up the ladder. And one of the things that the corporation that I was working for thought I lacked was like senior ability to understand the numbers. And I really like numbers. So it was a really good opportunity for me to go back to school. And so I did a post grad in what is kind of like an accounting course and maths course at the University of Westminster, which I did in the evening. So I still worked a full-time job and then did a master's program in the evening, which was very, very difficult. I did not expect it to be hard, and it was very, very challenging. It was like two very, very hard years. But the benefit of that is that although I didn't actually use it for the corporation that told me to get it, I really rely on that now, and really understanding the finances, and even just going back to school to get a grips of like numbers and accounting has been really monumental. I've launched the fund is I effectively, I guess, my third or fourth business now. And one thing that I really pride myself on is really understanding the numbers of our business and our business model and understanding financial modeling. So it's come into play. It's been super, super useful.
Okay, those are things I think our super secret agents need to learn. So if you can share like what those mean, like what all of that means, like what is financial modeling, like what is all that stuff, that would be really helpful. And then we'll go back to where you began, I guess, your sponsorship journey.
Sure. I mean, I can kind of talk a little bit about what I do now, because financial modeling is a great deal of what I do. So right now, I'm an investor. I basically invest money into people's really good ideas. And we invest really early, sometimes when it's just an idea, sometimes when they've maybe been selling their product for a couple of years. And that's really, really important because if I don't understand financial modeling, it's really hard for me to predict whether the company's going to be a success. So I wouldn't want to invest in a company that's not going to be a success. I would only want to invest in what success looks like. But founders or people that start startups will always think that their business is going to be a raving success. And so it's important to look at where they think their revenue is coming from, what the cost is for them to bring products in, how many people would need to work at that company in order to sell that many products, what kind of profit that would look like. So that's all financial modeling. And you can model other startups like, well, what if they went into Walmart? How much would that change? What if they didn't go into Walmart? How much would that change the business? So financial modeling is basically just making a prediction of where a business might go and the variables if they hit certain targets or not.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's really helpful, I think, because our secret agents are just learning as we go along. So this is great information for them. Thank you. Okay, so then you started your journey being literally a sponsorship queen. Like, tell us about that and how that, like, how you went forward with that.
For sure. So, for those of you that don't know, sponsorship is a form of marketing. So, if you like sports and you see a logo on your favorite basketball team or your favorite baseball team or your favorite Formula One team, sponsorship is really the act of those brands sponsoring the team by giving money. So, the transaction is effectively they give Formula One team money, and the Formula One team then lets them put their logo on the car. So I launched a business doing that, and it was really, really successful. And that's kind of how I landed in sponsorship. I did that in London for quite some time. I launched my business in 2010, but I had started doing sponsorship probably 4 years prior, and I sold my business in 2016. So I mean, I was doing sponsorship kind of for well over a decade. It's something I'm really, really interested in and passionate about. I really like the idea of partnerships and how people can come together to collaborate and really create something really unique.
Okay, so when you say you sold your business, that was the slingshot business that you sold?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so then you did, I guess you were an executive board director for ESA, and then you were an author. So tell us about that. How did you become an author?
Sure. So I actually wrote my first book when I was still at Slingshot Sponsorship. So the first book is called Pinpoint. Pinpoint I wrote myself. It was after I was thinking about selling my business. So it was kind of a how-to. So we were experts in sponsorship and we wanted to provide more information for other people on how to be good at sponsorship. So I wrote a book called Pinpoint. How challenging the norm is the only route to success in selling sponsorship. You can buy it on Amazon. It's a bestseller. And I did that in 2015, I believe. I wrote a book, the first book. And then I self-published that. And what that means is I did the work myself and I put it out there myself. And I used Amazon as a means to sell my book to other people. And because my book was so successful, a book publisher contacted me a couple of years after and asked if I was thinking about writing more books. And I hadn't really thought about doing that. And then I kind of launched on the idea of writing about leadership. And so I wrote my second book called Rule Breaker with a publisher called Kogan Page in London, which is also kind of globally distributed.
Yeah, that's recent. I'm excited to read that. That's on my list of things to read. Okay, so then you were a founder of Rebel, the wine?
Rebel Pie.
Yeah.
So when I sold my business, I made a lot of money and then launched a wine brand. So I dumped a bunch of money into kind of launching a wine brand. It's a wine brand from Canada. It's an ice wine brand. So what that means, it's just a different way of producing wine. And we sell exclusively in the UK.
And was it something that you always wanted to do? Like you like wine and you were like, this is what I want to do? Or was it just a mental thing that just kind of happened?
No, I mean, I really do like food and wine. So a lot of it kind of arose from passion. I had made a decent amount of money on my exit. And so I was looking at something to do. And we were on a wine tour for our honeymoon. And I just thought it would be a really interesting product to bring to the UK.
Okay, cool. All right. So then you were the managing director of Fast Company, right?
That's just a holding company. So because I'm known as an expert for a number of things, I get hired a lot of times to speak at events. I get hired to consult on big brand deals. I've got a lot of like random stuff. And so Fast Company Global is a holding company that takes in all of the extra stuff.
Okay, so then you started Sandbox Studios and where you are now. So tell us about...
Sandbox Studios is my next venture. So if you looked at Slingshot Sponsorship, my sponsorship agency being my first venture, this is my second. So I do a lot of stuff. I have a lot of things going on, but I usually have one or two focuses. And so Sandbox Studios is my main focus now. It's a venture capital fund. And what that means is we take money from individuals and then we invest that money on their behalf into startups. And the reason that people do that is that they hope that they get a really great return from that money. So at the moment, you probably have money, you probably have it sitting in the bank or a piggy bank in your bedroom, which is great and super important to do. But when you have more than piggy bank money, basically you don't want the money just sitting there. So you need enough money to like make sure you can pay for stuff on the day-to-day basis. But when you kind of have more than that, you want to make sure that that money is making money for you. So that's an investment. And you can invest that with better interest rates in the bank, or you can invest that on the stock exchange, which I'm sure you've heard of, or you can invest that with people like me. So we will take your money and we will put it into things that have a lot of potential upside. So I would take other people's investments and then invest them into startups in hopes that those startups become raging successes and then give all the money back to everybody who invested in the company. So that's what Soundbox does.
Okay, interesting. And during this journey, you've worked with Prince and Queen Elizabeth and Richard Branson. So can you tell us a little about those as well?
Sure. So those are clients from my first business, Slingshot Sponsorship. So because we did sponsorship, I mentioned sports as a really great example, but we would also get sponsors for music concerts and festivals and sports teams and events. So that's kind of why I was working with those people.
Okay, interesting. All right. So tell us what you learned when you were 11 years old that you've kept with you today.
So, I mean, I really think that work ethic is important. And I think my mother instilled that in me in a young age, and she was always working. And so, that was really important to me, I think, to keep. It never would have even dawned on me to not work. My mom worked her whole life when she had me. I wasn't in a household where my mother wasn't working. And so I never even thought it would be an option to not work. So working was always kind of like instilled at me in a young age. And I think, it was really important that I could, work hard, not just work, but work hard and kind of achieve stuff. And I think my mom always kind of told me that I could do anything I want. And so I really, really took that to heart. And I really do still believe that. And I mean, I think I'm currently a really great example of that today. And so working hard and having an ambition to want to do something more than what you're doing, I think is probably also something that I learned when I was really young.
Okay, that's really good to know. All right, I'm going to switch to the student questions now, and some of them are comments, but I'll read all of them. So you are a real-life superhero and a role model. Thank you for sharing. Have you had someone who inspired you in your journey, and how their encouragement help you become even more awesome?
This is a little controversial, but I never really had mentors. I really wanted to have mentors, I think, when I was growing up. And for whatever reason, I never had mentors because I think a lot of the stuff that I was trying to do or doing was really outside of the box. And so it didn't really work to have somebody that I could look up to. So when I did the sponsorship agency, my nearest competitor was 20 years older than me and male, all of them. And they all had like a very different background. And I never would have thought Slingshot would have gotten to as big as it did. And I think if I had thought that those guys were my mentors, it probably never would have gotten as big as it did, truthfully. And I think that has been good and bad. It means that I probably have made more mistakes than I would have if I had a mentor and somebody to like bounce ideas off of. And I think that has been hard because I have made lots of mistakes and I personally had to pay for those mistakes. But on the upside, it really has led me to really think outside the box and really find my own way of kind of coming to a conclusion of doing stuff. And right now, I still don't have mentors. So I would say I've never had a mentor. But like I have really great peers and I have people that I really respect and that I really value, whose opinion is different and better than mine in a lot of cases. And I work really hard at keeping like a really good dialogue with colleagues and friends. And I'm really open about asking for help and asking for favors. I mean, I think that is probably one of my superpowers. Like, I'm not afraid to ask questions. I am not afraid to ask for help. And most people are happy to help. So I wouldn't exactly say I have mentors, but I have a really good group of people. I usually surround myself with a very good group of people.
That's a really good point. And I think our super secret agents really need to hear that, because I think when you're young, it's really hard for you to ask for help, or you're shy, or you feel like some of them have been bullied or whatever. There's been all these kinds of things. So it's really good for you to share your experience, because I think it really helps them, at being successful as you are. Okay, I'm going to go to another question. You worked.
Can I actually, Sharon, can I just add on that? Just to like kind of really, so I get what you're saying about, ask for help, but like what I would add to that is like, if people say no or don't say yes right away or blank you, don't stop. Like sometimes you have to ask 10 people for help and one person will help you. And it doesn't mean that and I will say it has nothing to do with you. It almost never has anything to do with you. Some people are busy. They just had a baby. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff. So if you ask for help to one person and they turn you down or don't respond, ask somebody else. Like go find somebody who's going to give you help, and don't ever be afraid to ask for help, and don't ever be afraid to reach out to people. And I will say I get hit up a lot, but I almost never respond when it's a generic thing, but I always respond when it's like somebody who's like needs help with their university degree, needs a comment for like a project that they're working on. And I am super busy. I almost never meet like actual adults, but I will always find time because I was that kid who always needed that. And there will be people like me that are always willing to help. You just have to find them.
You're absolutely right. And I appreciate that, because I know we met last week in person. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think I appreciate you for sharing all of that stuff. Okay, so let's go to the next question. You've started a lot of companies. What was the experience like? And what are some of the challenges and setbacks that you've had?
I had so many challenges. So, I mean, one of the things I really like to talk about this a lot, because when I was young and I used to see successful people, it just looked like so amazing. And I feel like a lot of people now look at me like that. And I want to be very clear that it's like super hard. No, not inachievable, but like you can't just decide you want to be really good at something or decide you want to be really successful and it just happens overnight. Like there are so many failures. It is very, very challenging. And I mean, with my first business, I'm not somebody who cries often ever. I mean, my husband has probably seen me cry once. He's known me for 20 years. But like with my first business, I probably was like on the ground sobbing for one reason or another, like 4 or 5, 6 times maybe in the course of setting it up. It's hard. And you have to have like a lot of determination. So, I mean, it took me a really long time to get a client with Slingshot. It took me about 9 months to land my first client, which is a long, long time. And even then it took a long time to get my business to a place where I wasn't struggling with money or struggling to pay rent. It took about 2 to 3 years. But what happened is I was so determined to make it work that the work that I did when we had our first client was so amazing that we then started picking up clients really, really quickly. And Richard Branson was my last client before I sold the business. And we had gotten to a stage where I wasn't taking on new clients because I was too busy. And I literally told Richard Branson that I can't work on his account. And he said he wouldn't take his business to our agency unless I worked on his account, which is insane because 6 years before that, I was like, picking up the phone, like cold calling people on LinkedIn, trying to get people to work with me, sending emails that weren't ever getting written back, asking anybody, dropping business cards, going to like events, trying to get anybody who would hire me. And just 6 years later, I was turning down Richard Branson. And that's like insane to me, really. So it's just like you have to really stick to it, and you have to really be determined to do better and be better and work really, really hard and not take no for an answer. And then if you really do that, then you can kind of overcome challenges. But I mean, my whole life has been a challenge. It doesn't look like that from the outside, but everything is very hard.
No, thank you for sharing that and being so raw and authentic about it. And I think it's interesting because I'm curious to hear, and I think probably our secret agents would want to know, like, what do you think shifted between the beginning of like going through the motions and like calling people and not getting responses and just keep going, going, going? Was it just like a domino effect that like had everything
Yeah.
worse?
So I got a client. So what happened was I finally convinced somebody to hire me. And we did such a good job that everybody heard that we did such a good job. And then they were like, well, could you do that for us? And then I worked with them and I did such a good job. And it trickled out. Like Richard Branson heard about me through a guy called Bill Ty. Bill Ty heard about me through a guy that I consulted on in Silicon Valley, who had heard about me through somebody else who was doing like email marketing in London. So, this was probably from the guy that this originated from was like 3 years to Richard Branson, but I didn't even know that these people were talking. And so like, just like I did a really good job, and then they heard, and then they recommended it, and then I did this work for this guy, and then I did such a good job, he recommended me to this guy, and then they thought I should bring it, and then they wanted Richard. And so what happens is if you're good at what you do, and like this is the thing, I take a lot of pride in what I do. I only want to be the best. And so I'm like, I really work hard to not be average, but that requires a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work. But that's the domino effect. Like it just, I worked really, really hard to get a client. I finally got a client. I was super, super successful. And then I got another one, and then that was really good. And then I got 2 more, and then those were really good. And then I got 3 more, and that's how it works. That is how it works. If you're an entrepreneur, I mean, it depends on what foray you decide to go into. But for me, that's how it worked.
Yeah, no. And I appreciate, like I said, you being so honest and transparent with us, because I think our secret agents are getting a lot out of this stuff. All right, another secret agent question. Let's see. Can you explain what an executive consultant does, and why is this role important?
It's not important. An executive consultant is just a fancy way to say I give advice to senior people in businesses. So I have a level of expertise in sponsorship particularly, but general marketing as well. And so people that own companies or won't be able to hire me, because to hire me, I wouldn't work for anybody else. So people like me don't take corporate jobs, or certainly not anymore. So you can't hire me. I won't take a job. Therefore, it's almost like you can't really pay me. So the only way that I will be able to talk to you about your business is if you pay me to do so. And that's effectively what an executive consultant does. They get paid for a short period of time to work on certain projects.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's good. All right. So let me go to the next question from the kids. You are an amazing leader. Can you give us some tips on how to improve our leadership skills?
For sure. So I have a book called Rule Breaker. You can buy it on Amazon, or just get your teacher to buy one, and then everybody can share it. But for me, leadership is really about being honest. So I really, there's an old way of leadership that is called stick and carrot, or it's even like a way of parenting as well. So what that means is like you punish hard, or you reprimand hard. So if somebody doesn't do a good job, you would like ream them out to their face in front of other colleagues and make them feel bad. But then when they do something really, really good, you give them bonuses, or you like take them out and you really make them feel really good. And so it's like a way of motivating them to do the good things and demotivating them to do the bad things. I am not that kind of leader. The leader that I am is somebody who probably overly communicates, but I have a vision. I'm really, really honest about what it takes to work in an organization that I run in order to get to that vision. I will be the first person to tell you it's not going to be a cushy job. I think if you spoke to anybody who worked for me, they will tell you it was insane. They will also say I was one of the best bosses they ever had, but it was hard, and not everybody works like that and can work like that. And so in my organizations, I'm really, really honest about what that looks like. And the people that tend to stick around forever. But also it's not always the best environment for everybody. So that isn't necessarily the best example of a leader. So in larger corporates, a leader is somebody who can motivate a whole diverse organization to one kind of goal. My organizations were never that big where it was really, really important to do that. And so I always wanted to be like on a flat structure, and, no idea was not as important. Like, my ideas were more important than anybody else's. I genuinely valued the people that I worked with. And I mean, again, I would always say worked with rather than like who worked for me. So it's just, the way that I view leadership is just really trying to help everybody get to the same place, which is a different form. Everybody looks at leadership differently.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think everyone has their individualistic style. And I think that's important for agents to know as well. Okay, so next question. What superpowers do you have that have pushed you to where you are today?
Honestly, work ethic. I really, really believe, and I think anybody who knows me, I like work more than anybody else does. I do. And when I'm not working, I'm thinking about it. And when I'm not thinking about it, I'm like at a party somehow that's work related, that will be work related. So for me, I'm like really obsessed with the things that I do, which is why it's important. And this is the one thing that I will say. It's so important to do what you love to do, because if you don't, you're not going to be successful, because you're not going to be able to put the amount of time and effort into doing it. And like, I really like my job. I've always really liked all my jobs. And that's why I'm so dedicated. And I put in more hours than everybody else. And just on a sheer amount of time, you get better. Like, if I were wanting to be a basketball, so I can never become a pro basketball player. So also, I think, learn your limitations. But like, hypothetically, if I just shot hoops every day for like 15 hours a day, I'd be pretty good at shooting hoops. It's the same thing as work. So I flex my muscle with working all the time, every hour. And I work really, really hard, and I work really, really concentrated. And I think that is my superpower, which is not a superpower at all. It's just, I'm willing to put in the hours. So the great thing about that is anybody can do it.
That's so true. I think it takes determination and persistence and grit, which you definitely have, but also being true to who you are and what makes you tick. So yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to switch back for a second. You work in the finance field, which includes investing. Can you explain the importance of this and how our super secret agents can start their journey in the finance world now?
So I think the importance of, sorry, repeat the question again, just so I'm clear.
Yeah, you work in the finance field, which includes investing. Can you explain the importance of this and how our super secret agents can start their journey in the finance world now?
The importance of investing or the importance of finance?
I think both.
Okay. So investing is important because it really allows an ability to decentralize money. In a very, very broad stroke, I'm like Robin Hood. I'm taking from the rich and giving to the poor, which is actually not a very good example but for these purposes, it is. So it's an ability to help startup founders, who I was myself a startup founder, with capital that they need to launch businesses. If we don't invest in startups, what inevitably happens is large corporations, so things like L'Oreal, Coca-Cola, I'm trying to think of other businesses that you will know, Tide, any of those household brands are massive corporations, big businesses. But if they're the only people that are stocking your shelves and your drinks, you're never going to find new stuff ever, because they're just going to keep building and making the same stuff. So it's important for investors like us to fund small companies to be able to introduce new products to the market, to be able to introduce new ideas to the market, to be able to solve problems that other people aren't solving. So investment and the investing part of the ecosystem is super, super important. Women specifically is a really nice segment to go into. So although I have a fund, we invest in women, we invest in men. I don't have a remit to just invest in women. There are funds that do just invest in women, and that's really important. And why that's really important is, I'm sure you guys all know this, but basically for a very, very long time, men were traditionally the people that worked in the household. They traditionally had the money, and then they chose to invest that money where they saw fit. They tended to invest with people that look like them. People that look like them are other men. Now, those men then put money into stuff that they identify with, things that are challenges that they face. But females have very different challenges. Not always. Lots of males and females have the same challenges. But for instance, females have things like periods. That is a struggle. And there's a whole bunch of work and education, and there's been a lack of investment in those topics because men have only invested those dollars. And, they don't think that things like childcare are important, or women going back to work. And so there's a real shift now in investment going to women and investment going to female fund managers like me, because we have a different perspective. And that's important. Very important.
So true. And I think it's interesting because you're balancing a lot of things. So tell us about how you have time to volunteer. And I think there was something about a cheetah conservation fund.
Yeah, so I'm a brand ambassador for the Cheetah Conservation Fund. So I went to Somaliland and helped rescue baby cheetahs. I do very little work with them now, if I'm perfectly honest, but obviously promote the cause as much as I possibly can. But I did spend 2 weeks in Somaliland helping build shelters and a house and a whole bunch of other stuff for that. And in terms of time, I mean, I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time for a social life. I have 2 young children. So my priorities are work and my family, and that's it. And if I'm lucky to watch like Love is Blind for 1 hour a day, like that's winning for me.
All right. I know you've won like over 25 honors and awards, like everything from the sponsorship stuff to Entrepreneur of the Year to like Media 30 under 30, like female entrepreneur. Like how is that felt for you? Like, was it like validation of like you're on the right track? Like, tell us about that experience.
So no, but I mean, I get asked this a lot. So I would still sit here. So, I mean, I find all of this a little surreal. Not the awards, but I think I find it really interesting now in my career having these interviews. And I mean, I literally just had one yesterday that was talking about this as well. And I still don't feel like I've been very successful. So I really still feel like I've got a real long way to go, and I still got a lot more hard work to do. And, I wouldn't consider myself a success story by any means, truthfully. And so winning awards was a really great opportunity for me to promote my business. So I like to do them, and I obviously talked about them. But it, I mean, it's not like I thought that there weren't good enough candidates being applied. It doesn't resonate with me. Those things, I look at them as an opportunity for me to promote my business, and I'm really happy with that. I don't really take too much stock in that, truthfully. And like I said, I feel like I'm really scratching the surface of what I can do. And so, give me 10 more years and maybe I'll start feeling like those are more deserved.
Okay, so the word success came up a couple times. So I want to know, like, and I'm curious, I think our secret agents would be curious too, like, what does success mean to you?
I don't know. So I don't know. It sounds really bad that you always want more. And it's not necessarily that I always want more money, but I always, right now I have a fund. I make investments. Now I love that. And I want to see how those companies grow, and I want to do more investments, and I want to do bigger investments. And so for me, more is like, I always want more. That's the type of person I am. I'm a very big personality. I want more of everything. And so I don't know if I ever really, truly will look back and be like, wow, I was successful, or I felt that was successful, or I did a good job. I mean, I'm really, really proud of the work that I did at Slingshot. I'm really, really happy I exited, but I wouldn't have said, I mean, for me, success would be like a tick box. I think if I hit success, I would probably stop working. I don't think I will ever stop working. And so I probably will never really feel successful.
But to me, it sounds like your mom was the biggest role model because she was always working, and you are now like similar to her in a sense, and you're wanting to make a difference, it sounds like. So you're like, whatever I can do to keep going and going and going, like I want to do that. And I think that's like the perfect role model, especially in the STEM space, because you're all about math and finance. And that's literally what you do every day with the fund and all the companies that you invest in and what you look at and all the things that you told us already. So I think that's huge. All right. But going back to another student question, looking to the future is exciting. What do you imagine for girls in STEM down the road? And how can we make sure that everyone gets a chance to be part of the STEM adventure?
So this, I think, I think STEM is so exciting, but I think it's very exciting for a couple of different reasons. One is that, I mean, people would kill me for saying this, but I really think women are smarter than men. I mean, I've been working with men for a very long time. I just do. I really think women as a whole can think multifaceted. They can think with different variables. I think that they have a better mind to do science, math, technology, etc., than men do, who are honestly very single track. And this is a generalization. So please take this with a pinch of salt. But I think that women are just getting into this. So going back to my whole thing about where investment dollars have gone, what makes me so excited about investing in the space that I am in is because now women are being given money and there's so many more opportunities. And imagine the world that we can create. STEM as a whole. So that's investing is like one very small part of STEM, right? That's just math. Like think about this, like astronomy, and like what if we put women on, like more women are becoming scientists and like space people and all of that stuff. Like what could the world look like in 10 years with women at the helm of all of these important discoveries? I think very different. And I think it's a really exciting time for women to have the support, to have the financing, to be able to kind of like go and make these changes. And I truly believe that the next big world challenges that we will face will be solved by women. And I think those challenges can only be solved by STEM. So problems. So, I mean, I just think this whole thing is so fascinating and so exciting. And, you know, I think programs like this are super important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's not the first time. So don't feel like you're being pointed out for saying like women are much more superior than men and all the things, because it's not the first time we've heard that. Yeah. And like, yes, I've heard like women do like multitask so much better than men and all the things, but you're absolutely right. And it's a reason why I started this whole program with WhizGirls and WhizGirls Academy and all the things, and now this speaker series and podcast. So curious to hear like what your overall aspiring advice would be for our super secret agent trainees in the audience.
I mean, one, I think it's really important to really figure out what you're passionate about. I think one thing that we don't ask children a lot, and we probably should, is like, rather than what do you want to be when you grow up, is like, what do you care about most? Like, what do you like to do? What are the things that make you happy? And I think for me, I was really lucky that I fell into what I wanted to do. But I also know a lot of people that became dentists or lawyers, or I mean, sure, and you're kind of this as well, because their parents told them to do something. And when I was in university, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, because nobody knows what they want to do. Like nobody does. I really love what I'm doing now, but I have no idea what I want to do in 10 years. So that's normal. Like not knowing what you want to do is totally normal. But what is important is like to really ask yourself these hard questions. Like, what is it that I like? What do I think I would want to do moving forward? What could I spend all day thinking about? And when you're in school, you don't have that time, right? You're learning math, then you're learning STEM, but then you're at gym, and then you've got your friends and you've got your family, and there's a lot going on. But when you become an adult, or when you go to, after you graduate university, you spend 8 to 10 hours a day doing one thing. And so you should really want to love that one thing. Because if you don't, it's going to be very hard to make money. And so my first thing is like, figure it out. Start thinking about, don't figure it out, because you will never figure it out, but start thinking about like what you like. Then the second tip would be like, really work at learning, really work at like caring about, and let's just say maybe you do know you want to be a scientist. Now is the time. Hit up some scientists on LinkedIn. Talk to them. Ask them about what their day-to-day looks like. What are they interested in? What is it like? What time do they wake up in the morning? These are things that I never asked as a kid. Like I can't believe I wanted to be a psychologist, because I didn't understand that being a psychologist either meant being a research psychologist, which by the way meant being in a lab, which I think is great, but is not for me. I'm like, as you can tell, I mean, this is a podcast, you can't, but I'm a very people oriented person. And then the other thing is being a psychologist, like sitting there and listening to people's problems. I'm not very empathetic. So like, that is not a good career for me to be doing. And I also do not like to be stuck speaking to people like, or just one person. Like, I like to be out and about. I like to do deals. I like maths. So it was really surprising that I chose an education that is nothing like what the end job matched me as an individual. So like, if you want to be a scientist, go speak to scientists, ask them what they do during the day, ask them if that is like the thing that you want to be doing during the day. And then just work hard.
I think those are really good points, because obviously I think, like I got my job through an informational interview to work at Mattel, and then I finally worked there. So I think it's really important to find the people that you want to mentor you or like hire you or whatever that is, and just ask questions, because that's like what leads to figuring out what you want in the future. That's really, really important. Okay. How can our special secret agent trainees follow your journey moving forward? Is it LinkedIn, Instagram? You have a website?
So I'm very bad this way. So we have a website, www.sandboxstudios.ventures. It's a pretty boring website, truthfully, so I can't imagine that's very interesting. I'm on Instagram at Jackie Fast. You can follow me. I do post a lot about work stuff on there, actually, truthfully. So I think Instagram's probably the best, at Jackie Fast.
Okay, great. We'll add that to the show notes as well. Okay, we're going to switch to 60-second quick rounds of brief questions, and then we'll do key takeaways. All right, so what was your favorite toy growing up as a kid?
Roblox Cube. The Rubik's Cube. Yeah, Rubik's Cube.
Awesome. What was your favorite show or animated series as a child?
Friends.
Ooh, okay. Who is your favorite superhero?
Batman.
Nice. Okay. How about favorite show now?
Oh, I don't have very much time for TV. I like Succession.
Okay. All right. Let's do key takeaways. And let us know if we missed anything. Never let someone tell you what you can't do. Keep a good work ethic. Be ambitious. Don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help. Don't give up on your questions. Be determined to be better. Leadership is about being honest and communicate well. Value those that you work with. Do what you love to do. It will drive your success. It's okay to not know what you want to do. Figure out what you're passionate about instead. Work at learning.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey with us, Jackie. I'm sure that our super secret agents will learn so much from this episode. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you again, super secret agents, for tuning in.